think I'm gonna do this video without any notes. I don't need them. So this might become a series. I'm going to do a lot of pairings of a nonfiction book and a weird fiction book. I think that might go well together. And I really like this dual review thing. And lately, I mean, not lately, but for a long time, I've been really into weird fiction. So what is weird fiction, in case you're wondering? It is speculative fiction. It's under the umbrella of speculative. It sometimes crosses over into fantasy and horror, but there's also this like eerie element. It's also combining cosmic horror, and it always has this element of the supernatural in some way. In my opinion, when it is done well, it reads like literary fiction. Like, you might not even be able to tell it apart from a literary work that's taken very seriously. But there's this little element, a little something that is extra special. A little, is there something else beyond what we see? Is there something out there? And that is just chef's kiss for me, at least. So let's kick off the series with my comfort zone, which is shipwrecks and ships in general. You guys want to hear an ice-breaking joke? All right. What is a pirate's favorite letter in the alphabet? And then everybody will say, R. And you say, no, it'd be the C. You're welcome. The two books we're working with today is this collection, edited by Mike Ashley, called From the Depths and Other Strange Tales of the Sea. And the nonfiction work is A History of the World in 12 Shipwrecks by David Gibbons. So I'm going to start with this one. This collection has many authors from all over the place, and the fun bit is that a lot of these authors have had some experience out at sea. Either they were personally a captain or have written only about nautical horror and nautical things. And some of them have parents who were captains of ships. They lived kind of between the late Victorian period and early 20th century. So you get tidbits of different vibes of ships. Like, you get kind of the old school wooden ship vibes, the haunted ship, but then you also get echoes from World War I and the Navy and that kind of sea vibe. There are also elements in here that are sort of psychic in a way. So, for example, one of the authors here, Morgan Robertson, has sort of released a novella prior that predicted Titanic and predicted a lot of submarine warfare. One of his short stories is in here. There are echoes kind of resembling the curious case of the Mary Celeste, the ghost ship, which I definitely will make a video on that very soon. But again, it's all about the way these stories are written. There's that eerie element of something is unsettling, something's not right. I think I liked the earlier parts of this book because they had this feeling that made me feel almost like claustrophobic. It was giving Ocean Gate from last year. Unsettled on the ship, something was wrong. The first one in particular, you have this crew kind of hopping on this new ship and they were going to take it over, and they notice there's no one there except for this very thirsty parrot and a flattened cat, and no one understands why the cat has been flattened into a pancake or what happened. As they're on this ship, they don't feel quite right, and then they start hearing weird voices, and the voices are coming from the parrot, who's repeating the last things he has heard prior to the ship being creepily abandoned. And the things this parrot is saying is just so weird and creepy and scary. There are stories in here featuring invisible creatures and kind of speculating, is there this realm or this world that we just don't see? Are there things out there that can only be photographed by a very specific kind of camera? There are also hints at the psychic abilities. There are some stories in here where a captain of a ship connects with his ship kind of telepathically. It does remind me a little bit of Robin Hobb's Live Ship Traders, where the ships are quite, conscious and sentient. There are also very memorable characters. There are captains who have, like a pet mouse or something. There's a lot in here to love. I really enjoyed this collection. I flagged a lot of pages, and I think what got my attention is the detail that you get from people who are so noticeably out at sea. Like, there are details in here that I think an author who hasn't been out at sea wouldn't be able to capture. There are like little details that just make this feel so real. Like you feel like you're there. The vibes are everything. There's another Hodgson story that I loved in here. I really love his works. There's even a story in here written by John Wilkes Booth's granddaughter. Even Ashley, when he addressed his collection at the beginning, is that you get the sense that he's compiled many anthologies in the past, and he's trying to find things that are not only extraordinary and great stories, but they're also not anthologized often. So you wouldn't just get a repeat of what you would find in many, many other places. So I really appreciated that. There is this element as well that you get like a story from somebody who's been there, kind of like, you know, it happened to a friend of mine. You get many sailors tell a tale. So they'll be like, hey, you know, when I was in my youth and we were on this other ship, this thing happened. And this element of storytelling is so cool because you feel like it might have happened, and there is a lot out there at sea that's sort of inexplicable. This element is just so beautiful in storytelling, and it does happen a lot in these stories. There is a lot of, let me tell you a tale, like this is real. And another one is sort of finding or coming across a log or a journal where it's slightly investigative, but it's mostly, you know, reading the last diary entries of somebody on the ship to figure out and piece together what's happened. There are some weak stories as well, but overall the collection is wonderful. Loving reading about boats in general or the sea kind of brings this home in a very exciting way, whereas if you don't really like that theme, this might get a bit repetitive or a bit boring for you. But for me, it was 5 stars. Loved it. So now let's talk about this nonfiction book. So this is A History of the World in 12 Shipwrecks by David Gibbons. This is the first time where I've read an author's synopsis or biography and felt active jealousy in my heart, because this man sounds like he's Indiana Jones. First of all, I've never heard of a marine archaeologist before, so that's already really cool. But the main gist, and I'm telling you this because it ties into the way this book is written. So when he was in his teens, he went to a shipwreck and excavated kind of what was there and brought things up from the shipwreck, and it just sparked this love and interest in him to continue to dive and retrieve items that have been lost at sea. And then he went on to study archaeology and teaches archaeology, has a PhD in it, and is at Cambridge. So he's now a professor, very well versed in all of this. And in addition, on the side, not only is he constantly diving and in the field, but he's also writing fiction works that are very fun and upbeat and Atlantis style. Like, I want to call it, I don't know, to me he sounds like a Vernian character, like one of the extraordinary gentlemen who's both kind of Indiana Jones and smart, and also goes out at sea and has adventures and also writes fiction. I don't know, it just sounds like such a full and exciting life. But then when I started diving into this book, unintended, I got so scared at times, and I cannot believe courage to see footage, for example, online, or a picture of someone scuba diving in the depths of the ocean or the sea where it is dark, to have lost a light and to see yourself in this enclosed space in the dark. I get absolute chills. And he writes about this having happened to him several times. And I think when you really stop to think of what this kind of life looks like and what it means, it's really scary. So the way he's framed this book is, let's look at 12 shipwrecks that he was also slightly a part of. Like, he wasn't necessarily the one to discover it or anything like that, but he was called on site as an expert, or he went to visit it himself because he was interested. So in a way, all 12 shipwrecks are personally connected to him in some way. You do have his personal involvement, but then he will tell you about the shipwreck, where it was found, how it was found, and what it tells us about a historical period in civilization or humanity. So it starts off with sort of a Bronze Age. We kind of go through the King Tut findings and things that are similar to that one. There's the Franklin expedition as well, so we have Arctic stories. We have stories from the Middle East and China. There's one about a Viking ship, and for each one you get this very solid history of that time period that the shipwreck has preserved or maintained like a time capsule. Kind of similar to the way I spoke last year, a few years ago, about the Endurance being a time capsule in Antarctica. So you kind of get the sense too that he really favors certain things. Like, he always keeps referring to King Henry VIII's Mary Rose, and it's almost dropped or name dropped in every single chapter prior to it. And by the time we get to chapter 8, you're already really pumped to hear about King Henry VIII's flagship. And I know that one has like a huge project around it. And you get to learn about each historical time period, each shipwreck. And again, there's a touch of the personal. You get to connect with him about what it means to him a little bit, but it is highly academic. It reads different than, you know, his fiction works or things like that, but it's very exciting if you love ships and shipwrecks and archaeology in general. It also kind of led me to a podcast called Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs, which is an amazing podcast. I've been like binge listening to it. So there's that as well. All right, I'm going to end this video here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I sparked your interest in these two books. Yeah, this is gonna be a series. This is gonna be a series. And I have many videos coming up on weird fiction. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.